What is normal now but won't be in 25 years? We're slowly seeing paperwork die out in hospitals as nurses. I often think about down the line when employees will think it's crazy. I worked when they still used paper. Everything is online now. I hope it will be single-use plastic. 5, 6, 7, 5, 4 different streaming services, which amount to more than anyone ever paid for cable. The current shit of an education system. Broccoli head haircuts. People are totally going to look back at them and laugh or cringe. If you got told you would die at 52, what would you do? Well, that's the retirement problem sorted. I am 52, it's 3 a.m. in the morning, where I am reading this, and now I'm in some kind of existential crisis. Thanks, you were dead the whole time. I'm turning 49 this year, so I'd probably go into more debt so I can travel before it becomes infeasible. Yep, I'd take out new loans, max out all my credit, and live like a king my last 3 years. Might even commit some tax fraud in the last year to make even more. Considering I'm 63, not much. In English, we use the phrase righty, tighty, lefty, loosey as a helpful reminder. What other languages have comparable common sayings? Rechts dreht die Uhr, so geht's zu. Austrian saying, for the clock turns right, that's how it gets tight. In Swedish, we have a phrase to remember the countries in Middle America from top to bottom. Gustav be Elsa, hon nickar, kosta pengar. Gustav asks Elsa, she nods, it costs money. Countries Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama. In America, we have a phrase to forget all the countries in Middle America. Goddamn Mexicans. We're not big fans of geography or specificity, much to my chagrin. In Spain, we say, la derecha aprieta, la izquierda libera, right oppresses tightens, left frees. In my country, everybody knows of Roy G. Biv, who represents how colors appear in the spectrum. I learnt my very easy method just speeds up naming planets, to remember the order of the planets as a kid. Now, I'm an adult and teach science. Pluto is no longer a planet, so I teach kids my very easy method, just sorta, never mind. Which city is the worst tourist trap? Hollywood Buffet is pretty junky. Then, the Scientologists. I always feel bad for people who make the trip to Los Angeles and end up there. They must be like, TF? As much as I love the pure camp and cheesiness that is Niagara Falls, the answer is Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls was ridiculous. Niagara Falls would be so beautiful if you had to hike to get to a viewing platform, with the falls surrounded by nature. Instead, they designed it to be a cold Vegas. Niagara Falls ended up being a major inspiration for the formation of the national park system. Niagara was held up as an example of what could happen to beautiful areas if they were not protected well in advance of business developments overtaking them. Cities that people don't like for some reason. Guys, Paris is not a fucking tourist trap. If tourists stopped going there, Parisians would be ecstatic. London, San Francisco, and Rome are not tourist traps. They are literally global hubs of commerce and the arts. Nassau, Bahamas. It's the busiest cruise ship port in the world, and not for good reasons. It's a cheap place to stop that can accommodate the largest cruise ships, it's close to Florida, and fulfills the requirement of at least one foreign stop for U.S. cruises to operate without following U.S. labor laws. I could forgive that if the port was actually nice. It's not. Traffic sucks, public transit is bad, and the area immediately surrounding the port has some of the most aggressive vendors you'll ever find. It's all for the convenience of the cruise companies and none for the customer. What's your Cassandra's syndrome story, where you predicted something bad would happen, but nobody believed you until it was too late? Teenage years, my buddies started using an abandoned house for smoke sessions. Told them that was stupid, and a great way to get caught. 2 weeks later, they were all arrested. Back in 2022, I was with a company doing retail remodeling. I'm a union carpenter. COVID has f***ed up a lot of our shipping, and it was a very slow recovery. Certain specific items were far worse than others, and frequently so. Since I was a foreman, I would obviously take part in the pre-construction meetings, or Zoom meetings as needed, which included going over the general schedule. At the time, a very specific, could not be substituted with anything else type of counter was consistently delayed on all projects, and those that came in at all were so damaged they were unusable. I had seen it on my own projects and knew from other foremen in my company it was the same at their locations. This was not a unit we installed, but it was common knowledge. Anyway, a project for later 2022 was getting ready to go, and during the pre-con meeting, the GC made suggestions about changing the schedule, moving a timetable up that would be beneficial for most trades. Problem was, That new timetable absolutely hinged on the specific counter showing up at the scheduled date. Out of a group of like 15 dudes, I was the only one who spoke up and warned them this was a bad idea. I told them about the units not being delivered for months and coming in absolutely destroyed. I listed all the stores this had already happened in and how the people involved with that manufacturer had given a general warning this would continue. None of the men on that call really listened to me. Maybe it was because it wasn't my department. Maybe it was because I'm a woman. Maybe it was because none of them knew me and how much experience I had. Whatever the reason, they all agreed that they would change the schedule, banking on this unit arriving on time and in good condition. The counter showed up the last scheduled week of the job, and it looked like the Hulk was pissed he didn't get his coffee. The delays we dealt with during the job, because multiple departments were up in the air until the counter could be installed, were maddening. The counter wasn't part of my work, but it absolutely affected me anyway. Think the domino effect. The cabinet stopped Area A from being finished, so Area B couldn't move into that new space, so Area C couldn't occupy that space, and so on. I did get in an I told you so, though. Towards the end of the job, the GC was searching for that counter, hoping other locations had received theirs and were willing to give it over in exchange for ours when it came in. Everyone he called all had the same story. The counter wasn't coming in anytime soon, or they were waiting for their replacement because of the damage. The GC finally looked at me and simply said, "We should have listened to you." And I just said, "Yeah, you should have." What a pain in the ass that was. Early in my career, I was on a job site where a man was killed for both a very stupid reason and because he was trying to prove the man who refused the work was a pussy. So I don't f*** around with safety. Mostly everyone knows what's unsafe, they just choose to ignore it in favor of getting the job done. So anyway, at my current workplace, there is a very old forklift, but it's small, so it's good for tooling around in tight spaces, so I used to use it a lot. One day as I'm using it, the brakes entirely fail. The pedal just drops straight to the floor. Luckily, I'm no more than idling, so no harm done. But I hop out, take the keys with me, and go looking for some kind of lockout, rag-out device until it can be serviced. Turns out there's not a lockout in the whole fucking building, so I leave the keys with the building manager and explain that it is absolutely not safe. He calls in the service guy. The service guy can't find anything wrong. He believes me, of course, but we couldn't replicate the issue, so it had to go back in service. I'm sympathetic to this, but I tell my crew they better be ready to yank the handbrake if they use it. A few weeks later, I'm shuffling some pallets, and I feel it again. Now, I'm not about to report a ghost again, so I keep my handbrake ready, and I figure out what's happening, which is that it doesn't happen until the hydraulics gets hot, and you have to be riding the brake. This particular model will idle forward when in gear at a pretty good clip, so you ride the brake to mitigate that. So, mechanic dude didn't see any of that by zipping up it down the center aisle unloaded. So I lock it out again. Again, the mechanic comes out. Again, bupkies. So at this point, f*** you buddy, I spread the word on my team that nobody is to use that damn forklift, that it's unsafe and not to touch it even if no other forklifts are available. I told the other teams, of course, but I don't think anyone really took me too seriously. Until someone almost drove straight off the dock. Turns out it seems a lot more unsafe when you nearly die in a propane fireball as opposed to bumping into some inventory. That fucking forklift is still in service for some reason, but no one in the building will use it. I have an uncanny ability to tell when a children's birthday party is about to go south and someone is going to get hurt. There's a certain fever pitch that playing children reach when they've had just the right combination of sugar and exertion and lack of real adult supervision, and somebody ends up colliding and crying. I would say to my husband and kids, I think it's time for us to leave now. And sometimes they would listen, and sometimes they would want to stay just a little bit longer. Every time we would stay, someone would end up getting hurt. It got to the point where I could look them and say, I'm calling it, and they would immediately pack up and head for the car. Sometimes we could hear the crying on our way out to the parking area. My entire life, I thought I would die at 25. Obviously, no one believed me. 2 months prior to turning 26, I was in a massive car accident. I broke both my legs, my arm, and suffered a major traumatic brain injury. I only survived because an EMT was driving to work, saw the accident, who I happened to be friends with in high school. I was told he went above and beyond what was required and kept me alive. Luckily, I am all healed up, including my brain, except for my left ankle. Out of the blue, my wife's ex-stepmother calls and wanted to re-establish communication. She's retired, has a good relationship with her own adult children, and seems to be doing okay. Only her last husband died a little over a year prior. I mentioned to my wife to watch out. She may be trying to get back with her dad through her ding ding ding. After 6 or 7 years of playing nice, she sees that my father-in-law isn't going to get back with her. She ghosts my wife. First meeting with my brother's then girlfriend, my dad and I looked at each other and just went, yep, disaster down the line. Mom, however, was, at the time, adamant that things would work out eventually given time. Fast forward 15 years, my brother's marriage is no more. The separation is a mess of epic proportions, and 3 kids are in the middle of this shitstorm. My dad is, sadly, not here to see the results anymore, but it didn't stop me from bitterly commenting on how we were right last time I visited his grave. Conclusion: don't settle for the person who wants you just because you're desperate to have something. Well, that's another episode of Ask Reddit in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.